In 1997, Apple was just 90 days away from bankruptcy. The company that once revolutionized computers was bleeding money. Its products were failing, and investors had lost hope. But then, Steve Jobs returned, and in just a few years, he pulled off one of the greatest comebacks in business history. This is the incredible story of how Apple almost died and how Jobs saved it. Apple's journey began in 1976 when two college dropouts, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, built the first Apple computer in a garage. By the 1980s, Apple was a tech giant, changing the industry with the Macintosh, one of the first personal computers with a graphical user interface. But behind the scenes, things weren't so perfect. By 1985, internal conflicts led to Steve Jobs being forced out of the company he built. Without his vision, Apple lost its identity. Over the next decade, Apple made a series of terrible decisions, expanding into too many products, launching failed devices, and struggling to compete with Microsoft, whose Windows operating system dominated the market. By the mid-90s, Apple's products were expensive, outdated, and confusing. Sales plummeted, and the company was burning through cash. In 1997, Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy, losing over $1 billion a year. With no clear direction and no innovation, Apple was desperate. They needed a miracle. And that's when Steve Jobs made his return. And everything changed. In 1997, with Apple on the brink of collapse, the company made a bold move. They bought Next, the computer company Steve Jobs had started after leaving Apple. This wasn't just about technology. Apple's real goal was to bring Jobs back. When Jobs returned, Apple was a mess. Too many products, no clear vision, and mounting losses. The first thing he did, he slashed Apple's product lineup by 70%, killing off failed projects and forcing the company to focus only on a few great products. But that wasn't enough. Apple needed money, fast. In a shocking move, Jobs turned to his biggest rival, Bill Gates. In a deal that shocked the tech world, Microsoft invested $150 million into Apple, keeping it alive. But Jobs knew money alone wouldn't save Apple. He needed to rebuild the brand, streamline operations, and bring back innovation. He introduced a new design philosophy, simple, sleek, and user-friendly. And then, in 1998, Apple launched its first major comeback product, the iMac. With its colorful, futuristic design, it became an instant hit, selling millions. But Jobs wasn't done yet. The real revolution was still coming. The iMac was just the beginning. Steve Jobs had a bigger vision to make Apple not just a computer company, but a lifestyle brand. First, he reinvented Apple's marketing. The Think Different campaign made Apple cool again, positioning it as the brand for creatives, innovators, and rebels. This wasn't just an ad, it was a cultural shift. Then came the iPod in 2001. At a time when MP3 players were clunky and complicated, Jobs introduced a simple device with a click wheel and 1,000 songs in your pocket. The iPod became a global sensation, selling over 400 million units and transforming Apple into a consumer tech powerhouse. But the real game changer came in 2007, the iPhone. This wasn't just a phone, it was a computer, music player, and internet device all in one. It redefined the industry, killing off competitors like BlackBerry and Nokia. With the iPhone's success, Apple became unstoppable. In just over a decade, it went from almost bankrupt to the most valuable company in the world. And it all happened because of one man's vision, bold decisions, and relentless pursuit of perfection, Steve Jobs. Apple's story is proof that one right leader can turn failure into greatness. If Jobs hadn't returned, would Apple even exist today? Let me know what you think in the comments.